What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel for another video. We're going to take a look at the Ally and the Legion Go playing PALWORLD, and we're going to take a look at 1080p and 720 for the Ally, 1200p and 800 for the Go, and at various watts and settings, and just kind of talk about that a little bit as far as performance and what the game's running like on the handheld system. So let's go ahead and get into it, starting with the ROG Ally. There's not a lot to go on with settings on these devices, but you can see here there's a few things to tweak. We're going with basically medium and 1080p to start with when we get into the Ally here, and we'll mess with 15 watts, a little bit of 20 and 25 just to get a general idea as well. And being an Unreal Engine 5 game, which is something I didn't even really realize until after launch, it is kind of acting like other Unreal Engine 5 games I've tested lately on the handhelds for sure. And at 15 watts, I wouldn't expect 1080p to do well, especially at all medium. And mostly you want this game running at low with medium effects and medium textures anyways, pretty much no matter what, if you want to maintain the highest frame rate that you possibly can. Now with this, at the low, medium, 1080p, 15 watts, 4 gigs of RAM on the Ally, still obviously not going to be a real doable situation when it comes to getting good enough performance out of the game. And I didn't really anticipate that it would be. Now, if we go in here and we switch over to 25 watts manual, so that we'll pretty much go with 25 watts there at the same settings, 1080p, we will gain 5 to 10 FPS, depending just in this particular area to give us an idea. But keep in mind, depending on where you're at in this game, especially later on, when you get into much larger battles or more multiplayer areas, your performance is going to suffer even more. This is just a general idea of the kind of performance I'm getting in the first 3 or 4 hours of the game in some of the beginning areas here, but I've definitely seen where things are going to get a little bit harder to run later. And out here getting into a little bit of battle where there's a lot more pals running around and stuff like that. Performance is low here at the 25 watts too, trying to do the low medium here at 1080p. So again, I don't think 1080p is super viable when it comes to PALWORLD here, and you'll see when we get to the Go that 1200p is not great either, but I did want to show them here. And for someone that might want to lock to 30 FPS and attempt that, you might mess around or go to 900p here. But if we switch over to 720p, those same low medium settings at 15 watts here even, you'll see we get much better frame times, we get much better performance all in all. The game feels better to play, even though we're going to get some spikes in frame time things here and there as we move around. Overall, it's just a much better experience. And even when I messed with 900p, unless I was still going for that 30 FPS range, it wasn't that great. 720p though, the low medium runs pretty well, and that's even at 15. If you want to bump things up, which I think you certainly will have to, especially later on in the game in larger battles and things like that, we'll hit that 25 watt manual here, and you'll see we can actually hit that 60 FPS and above in some areas here, which is nice to see, and frame times get even better. So obviously a tough game to run, and the more power we can throw at it and the lower we can do the resolution and stuff, the better it does. But you're gonna have to find your own balance as to what you want to really get out of the game. It's a game that you can certainly get away with 30 FPS if you want to, but like I said, it is going to get harder to run down the road as well. Now, for the fun of it, we can just bump these settings back up to the medium we had in the very beginning, staying at the 720p 25 watts just to show you that, because the game really does look so much better when you can bump up those 3 settings a little bit. But again, you're going to start to lose some of that performance. Frame times are still pretty good. You will be under 60, but again, later on in larger battles, more multiplayer, whatever you may get into, you could certainly see some lower frame rate there too. But I think at 720p, you could certainly bump up those shadows from time to time and at least get a little bit better experience. Now over on the Legion Go, similar thing, but we're going to do 1200p and 800p due to the 1610 here and get native handheld performance that way. Same 4 gigs of RAM, 15 watts here, same medium settings, 1200p, and of course similar 2829 what we had over on the Ally. And then at 20 watts here, very similar as well, bouncing in the low 30s, which I would expect here at 1200p. Certainly not a game I would recommend 1200p. Neither are really any of the other RE5 or Unreal Engine 5 games rather on these APUs. But if we go to those low settings again, like we had before over on the Ally, we're sitting here at 25 watts, 1200p. Performance is, similar to what we had over on the Ally. Frame times aren't as good. We're going to bounce in the 30s and 40s. And again, I just think 1200p or the 1080p is a little bit much for these handhelds, at least right now at early access and launch and servers being full and all that kind of thing. Here at 20 watts in that same area we were on the Ally, a little bit of fighting here with the PAL. Same thing in the 30s with these settings, even with the lower slash medium there, and 20 watts here, which is your red ring performance mode on your Legion Go. All right, so I want to switch this over to 800p. Much like the 720p over on the Ally, this is the sweet spot. This is where it runs the best. I highly recommend going with 800p. The game looks fine on the screen this way. It's really colorful on the go. And even at 20 watts, you can get some good performance. If you want to cap something to 30 or 40, 45, you could do pretty good here. Again, it is going to get harder to run in other areas of the game later on. But as a general idea here, a little bit better performance at 20 watts on performance here. With the Go. And if we get back to camp here, similar thing with as we had on the Ally, but we're at low medium here, 800p, 20 watts, and it runs pretty well here. You'll always get that dip when you load in and out of your camp, at least for now, at launch, but that's just kind of the way the game is running. But yeah, hopefully this gives you guys a general idea of how PALWORLD's running on this Z1 Extreme here from AMD, and on the Ally and on the Go specifically. It's running decent enough, I think, if you stick with that 720p for the Ally, 800p for the Go, and you bounce around that maybe 20 watt range for the most part. You can kind of find a sweet spot, but plenty of room to play around with things and get it to run the way that you want. All right, guys, thanks a lot for coming and check out the video. As always, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.